Yeah.
I was looking forward to finding out if Colin was going to be acting like the Notre Dame players in the locker room today. He's going to be a little, rough around the edges.
Yeah. Boy, our guy Dan Wolken really just coming in and starting up a storm in the locker room, talking about the bizarre scene it was for Notre Dame last night in the locker room. Bizarre scenes in the Notre Dame locker room, players yelling at reporters, coaches warning people not to ask certain questions. Amateur hour.
I mean, that's what they call the studio, right?
I think most people saw that Dan Wolken was the one that was first reporting this and immediately thought, this guy's so soft. He's being soft here. He's overreacting. But then there were some confirmations from some others that it was a weird scene for a losing locker room. Even
Yelling.
One guy who covers Notre Dame, who's one of their beat writers, said it was a rough scene after the game.
Surprising, given the fact that we've seen them lose to Northern Illinois. Although the media horde would not be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I've never been in a locker room.
Can we talk
like
for
that.
a second about how to handle sport adversity when it comes your way?
Yes.
Just with a flashpoint of all that's gone on here.
Before we dive into it, I think the majority of teams handled it pretty well.
100%.
Okay.
No doubt. I think most handle it the way you want to handle it. Now, look, I also don't like a team that is out there, as Hutton says, exchanging jerseys after the game and dapping each other up. And, oh, man, this is so great. What are you going to do this offseason when their season comes to an end or they have a devastating loss in the final moments or whatever?
Happy.
You want players to care. They put a lot into this. You want them to have emotion around it. You want it to mean something to them. But I also think we get a little stretched too thin with some of this narrative surrounding Ohio State and Ryan Day like he stormed the beaches of Normandy because he came back from a loss to Michigan. He came back from a loss to Michigan and he hosted a game in the playoff. There are 133 teams, I think, in FBS. 121 of them would love to be Ryan Day hosting a playoff game. There are a lot of teams that face way more adversity than Ohio State faced this year. Hats off to Ryan Day and Ohio State for handling that adversity on the field in a way that every fan base would hope their team handles it. Any team anybody's ever been a part of, if you've ever coached anything, you want your team to handle on-field adversity that way. But right after the game, Ryan Day staring blankly as his players are brawling with Michigan players, not doing anything.
In a daze.
Looking disheveled in a daze. I mean, to hear Kirk Herbstreit talk about it, it was just the worst thing anyone could ever go through in their life. I don't get it to that extent. I understand the obsession with Michigan for Ohio State fans, and it kind of works both ways on that. But again, let's celebrate that, hey, they played a really bad game against a rival that meant a lot to them in a losing streak, and they lost. And instead of rolling over and playing dead, they said, you know what, screw you. We're not going to just win the national title. We're going to steamroll everyone on our way to winning the national title because we're better than you are. And Ryan Day went brain dead in that game. He was so fixated on trying to be tougher than Michigan because he just wanted to run his head into the brick wall over and over again instead of realizing, I don't really have to be tougher. We're better. We can throw it up to Jeremiah Smith more. There's a lot of things we can do to win this game. He didn't adapt. He adapt in that game. He lost, but they recovered nicely. And now this with Notre Dame, I hesitate to fully take Dan Wolken at his word. I have a history with the guy. I don't really like him or respect him that much. But if he's saying it and others are saying it, that's a weird scene for a team that I love throughout this whole process. I love that it means a lot to them. I love that they're angry about it. But if Marcus Freeman has assistant coaches yelling at reporters, demanding they not ask certain questions, and guys are screaming and cursing at reporters in the locker room, that is displaced emotion not being directed in the right place. So that's something you got to clean up if you're the head coach. That's not a good look.
Yeah, and look, I think media should have thicker skin in certain situations in a locker room. You're going to have a variety of emotions and reactions. But I think it does stand out, Chad, if the team itself if it's represented by the majority by, players being disrespectful or not answering certain questions. I'm talking about questions that are asked in a respectful manner. Swearing at reporters. I mean, again, I need to put myself in that situation and judge for myself. I don't know exactly what it was like, but it's more than Wolken that's saying this. But I think the vast majority of responses that I've seen from reporters that were in the room say, yeah, it was a very emotional locker room. That's what you want, really, as a reporter.
Yeah,
you want an emotional locker room.
The Notre Dame writers are understandably defensive of Notre Dame in this because they don't want to alienate their fan base. So, look, I don't think the truth is in the middle here. I think the truth is probably more on the side of Dan Wolken.
I think so.
He's just the one that talked about it when the Notre Dame people weren't going to talk about it. And I don't think it's some, crime against the state that they were yelling at people in the locker room and upset with the loss. I just don't think it's a great look for a team that won the respect, and I'd even dare to say the rooting interest of a lot of American sports fans that otherwise would never root for Notre Dame in anything throughout this run. So that's a bad way to end it.
Let's say this. I think the vast majority of people were rooting for the Notre Dame coach.
Yeah.
That's also unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus Freeman raised his profile, exponentially during this run.
And on the flip side of that, so earlier today, Molly McGrath, who was on the sideline covering Notre Dame, I think she's
being sworn out?
She's seeing some of the Dan Wolken talk and all this. The exact opposite. She posts on X, and I just happened to see this right before we went on air. It was an honor covering Notre Dame football during this run to the championship game. Their players, staff, and Coach Freeman handled every media request and every interview with kindness and grace. After interviewing Ohio State on the field, I was tasked with interviewing Marcus Freeman outside of their locker room after he spoke to his team. He was kind and patient with my questions and then proceeded to stand in the hallway and watch Ohio State's trophy ceremony from a TV across the hall. He looked heartbroken and determined. Freeman and the Irish will be back. The look on his face said it all. That from Molly McGrath. So totally different portrayal of what we heard from Dan Wolken. Also, Dan Wolken wasn't saying Marcus Freeman was running around yelling at reporters to not ask questions. It was some coaches and players.
Yeah.
Which that would really shock me if it was Marcus Freeman doing that, which he wasn't.
So that's following Ohio State's victory in what looked to be just an absolute boat race. I mean, during the middle portion of this game, Chad, I was like, man, this is going to get ugly because Notre Dame can't stop what Ohio State's doing through the air. Everything was working. They got the run game going, get some big plays in the backfield, and this is all she wrote because Notre Dame couldn't keep up. They couldn't sustain drives. 3 and outs were killer. But then that comeback, and I'm thinking, all of us, they've got it within a one-possession score. Here we go, one score. Can they pull the comeback and actually what I'm thinking? What happens to Ryan Day if he loses this game? Maybe it was championship or bust at the end. They hang on, they get the score at the end, all that.
By the way, Hutton, quickly.
The celebration on the field goal.
Before we get to that, the moment in the game for me was Notre Dame's got all the momentum. Everybody's making fun of Marcus Freeman for attempting that field goal.
Right.
Down 16, it goes off the upright. And then Notre Dame finds a way to get the ball back quickly. After the turnover, they go down and score. They get the 2-point conversion. All the pressure shifts to Ryan Day and Ohio State. And he just runs his head into a brick wall twice. And I'm thinking to myself, is he going to do the Michigan playbook? Is he going to just show how physical his team is? Is he going to get really tense and scared and run it again and punt and actually give Notre Dame, with all the momentum, a chance to win it?
And that team with Riley Leonard.
And instead, he said, nope, single coverage on the outside, go route, perfect pass, perfect catch.
Put it on Howard.
Jeremiah Smith, 2 players, made a play. And I was like, boy, Ryan Day learned from his mistake. And hats
Chip
off
Kelly
to
called
him.
It up. Yeah, I'm with you.
And Chip Kelly also, but Ryan Day's the one. And if he wanted to say run it again, make him call timeout. Run the clock. Nope, they went for it and they got it.
Ohio State should have won the title preseason. Just based on the roster. I mean, we've been talking about how talented this roster was for an entire season plus.
Title or bust in the preseason.
It was, and they were one of maybe 2 top teams we could say that. It was Georgia. They're going to have that expectation. And Ohio State. Not even Texas would have title or bust. They would if it was the 14 playoff. I think it was just get to the Final Four again based on the structure and the first year in the SEC. Again, maybe Texas fans disagree with that. I can't think of another program, Chad, that was title or bust other than Georgia and Ohio State. Georgia just based off of recent championship success. Ryan Day should absolutely take his victory lap. after what happened in the loss to Michigan and the way and the path that Ohio State took to get to the title game, the opponents that Ohio State was facing, they were looking at this going, oh, we have to go through Ohio State. We have the toughest path. Now look at what Penn State's doing. Ohio State also faced that structure and those opponents, and they went through them. And they faced a very good Notre Dame, a very a compelling team, one that Chad mentioned you kind of want to root for, which is unusual. And they went toe-to-toe and dominated the vast majority of that game. They're the rightful champion. But this head coaching vibe and the victory lap after the title, that he overcomes the mountain, and he's at the top of the college football mountain. This is unlike any head coaching fan base relationship I can remember after finally reaching the pinnacle of the sport with all the pressure mounting. He's one of 3 active champion coaches in college football. It is now Ryan Day paired with Dabo Swinney and Kirby Smart. But he can't beat Michigan. And that is really the pinnacle for Ohio State football right now. That is the mountain in front of them. And while others are celebrating, and the true, I would say the true fans are celebrating, and they should, absolutely. I'm with them on this. There are others that are wishing for one more thing. They're saying, man, we're national champions, but they can't get the Wolverines out of the back of their mind. And that's because Michigan still owns them, and they have space in the minds of Ohio State fans rent-free. Because, let's go back to last year. Michigan beats them. Jim Harbaugh's not on the sideline. Michigan goes on, fighting against the cheating allegations, all of the espionage through Connor Stallions that Ohio State was behind in some ways, helping the Big Ten investigation, praying for some NCAA step in with the rules. None of that came. Michigan goes on to win the championship. They win the national title. They're the face of the sport. And Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, says they want it fair and square while handing the trophy to them. They're the reigning, defending national champions, Michigan. Meanwhile, Ryan Day can't get through them. Fast forward to the next meeting. Ohio State's rolling. A 1-point loss to Oregon is all they have. Michigan's down. Jim Harbaugh's gone. Top players in the pros. Michigan beats them again. Holds Ohio State to 10 points. 13-10. They get the win, and they plant their flag at Ohio Stadium. Then the Buckeyes go on the run. Championship run. Had Ryan Day coached an Ohio State team that lost to Tennessee, following that loss, he would be paid to fail. They would have said GTFO. And instead, they're raising the championship trophy over their head. But I think the vast majority, and I do feel that the Ohio State fans still will point to the fact that he's got to beat Michigan and celebrate the championship. But there's really one mental championship, and Michigan owns it still. Am I wrong?
No.
Because this feels different than the average team that finally reaches the championship marker. And this team should have, by the way. They reached the expectation based on the talent that Ryan Day brought in. He did everything right. He just lost one specific game that he can't seem to win. The pressure's still there, and he's got to beat that team.
And I do think that, and this is probably the case whenever one side is on the losing end in a series like this with Michigan and Ohio State, there is an unhealthy obsession right now with Ohio State fans towards Michigan. It's completely unhealthy, especially when you just won the national title. And it should be even sweeter, though, that you followed up Michigan's national title and the return to the top by you winning a national title when you just won one 10 years ago. It's been since 1997 for Michigan, and then last year, and then, oh, by the way, the very next year, Ohio State. So as you go down the annals of time, it's going to say Michigan, Ohio State. with the very next national title. So even though you lost, and I get it, the head-to-head thing matters, and you've lost 4 straight and all of that. So
let me ask you this. So let's just compare it to Chad is a diehard Tennessee fan. 1998, had you had a loss that year, and it was to Florida, how would Vols fans feel about the loss to Florida? I think it's very similar. Not where you run the coach out, but there's still something missing, right?
Yeah.
You don't feel whole. And
I mean, Peyton Manning's entire career in college is what's missing. He couldn't beat Florida.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, he won an SEC title. He beat Alabama. He beat every other rival. He beat Georgia.
So
every time,
I guess
right? He just couldn't beat Florida, so that was what hung over him.
So maybe it's not.
If there's one, but that's the only negative in Peyton Manning's college career.
Yeah.
But it's still something that a lot of people will say about him. Taking it to your point, Hutton, can't beat Michigan or lost 4 in a row to Michigan and lost to a much worse Michigan team this year.
Yeah.
That's still what a lot of people will say about Ryan Day.
And
that's completely unfair.
Not just say,
but that's what a lot of people will say.
But I think that this is only a few, I think, of the fan base. But there are some, and I've heard from one of them here last night. Yeah, Ryan Day helped us with. It was really Chip Kelly. Ryan Day can leave and we'll be fine. That's the unusual part of it. Is like the coach just like the Gatorade bath. You could almost see everything just wash away, all the pressure. But the expectation is, well, Michigan, and did you really reach what we wanted? Come on. I mean, it's way over the top, but there's still the fan base wants to see more. And I think the logical fans are celebrating this like they should. Tyler Castle should be celebrating this. But I also think Tyler, one of our staff members, he would say, yeah, we could probably still be just fine with this roster without Ryan Day. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
If you think about who the championship coaches now,
it's insane. I mean, he's off to historic starts with his career.
Yeah.
7 years in, he's got an .875 winning percentage. He's 70-10, and now he has his national championship. Kirby Smart is 105-19 after 9 years, .847, so worst winning percentage. He's got the back-to-back national titles. If Ryan Day wins another national championship the next year or two, he's a better coach than Kirby Smart. I didn't think I'd be saying that at the end of the year. We're coming close to it. Now, on the flip side of all that, I have no idea how this Ohio State team lost 2 games. When you look at the 2 in the loss column at the end of this, that is a 16-0 team, or 17-0, I guess, if they played in the Big Ten Championship, which they didn't. The fact that this team didn't play for a conference championship and lost 2 games when I watched their run through that playoff astonishes me. I mean, we are going to look back and we see some of those undefeated teams, those great teams. I think of some of the Alabama teams under Nick Saban, the Kirby Smart,
that Georgia
groups,
defensive group.
Georgia LSU offense with Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I don't want to immediately get into this best all-time deal because Ohio State's not there. But I'd put this roster and their future NFL players up against the best all-time. And I'm going to see a 2 next to their name. It's going to have win total and 2.
Well, some fans just see 1.
Blows my mind.
No one mentions
and that's
the
when
Oregon
you come
loss.
back on with Ryan Day and say, that's weird.
Yeah, where was the game plan?
Where was this at Oregon? Where was this against Michigan? It's just, look, bad games happen. They played a terrible game at home against Nebraska and almost lost. Bad games happen. Great teams overcome bad to mediocre performances and win. That's what Ohio State did against Nebraska that day.
Yep.
2 losses is crazy with this group. Crazy. That roster is stacked with talent at every level, at every position. They have not a single weakness on that team. And they lost 2 games? Crazy to me. Again, don't want to poo-poo on Ohio State and their fans right after winning a national title. Congrats. Great way to bounce back from adversity. All of those things. I think even Ohio State fans are going to watch this and say, how did we lose 2 games with that team when you watch them in the playoff? For American sports fans who didn't pay a lot of attention to Ohio State and watch every game throughout the regular season, if you just turned on the TV and watched them starting with the Tennessee game in the college football playoff, you would say this is the greatest ensemble of college football talent ever. And they didn't lose all year. No, they lost twice. Weird.
Chad, now that the college football playoff is complete, wrapped it up with the championship last night. I look back and think, well, okay, we've got 2 rounds left of the NFL playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The way things concluded, I do like the timetable of things. I'm hearing a lot about should it start a week earlier and all this. I like where it is and where it sits in January. I'm starting to hear a bit of that complaint of the length of things. But overlooking in totality now, the first 12-team college football playoff. Pros and cons from Chad Withrow.
So, first off, guys, if you see TV ratings from last night, let me know. I have not seen them yet. I'd like to see how this one ranks against other games. I do think that the length of the playoff and the lateness in which this season ended for college football terms was a negative. And I think it's more of a negative that they took so much longer to start. I don't think you need 3.5, 4 weeks. 4 weeks for some teams to get the playoffs started. I'm with Joel Klatt. I don't know if you move the Army-Navy game to week 0 or you play the Army-Navy game at 11 a.m. Central and start the college football playoff starting at 2:30, where the Army-Navy still gets its own window, but you have playoff games that weekend. I do think starting a week earlier could help this thing move along and feel like you didn't leave one season and enter a second season. It's almost a blending in of the season like you see with the NFL playoffs. I'm also going to exclude in what I'm talking about here any additional teams to the playoff. It's going to happen. It's only a matter of will it be 14 or 16 total. So I think it's fine. I'm all for more teams and more playoff games and more meaningful games in November for more teams. So I got no big objection to 14 or 16, but just for the purposes of this exercise, don't care. That's going to happen regardless of what I say. Now, just using this current format of a 12-team playoff, what would I change? It's very simple. I think these are easy fixes to help the entire college football playoff. One, as I mentioned, start the thing a week earlier. Don't know how you get there. Maybe Army-Navy gets its own window in December, and then you start games after that game. Maybe Army-Navy moves to week 0, start it a week earlier, get it going quicker, end it quicker. 2, extend the on-campus host sites to the quarterfinals. If you earn a bye, which I'm going to get to the bye process also, I don't think you should start your college football playoff run at some neutral site in a bowl game. I think you need to get the benefit that Notre Dame and Ohio State and Texas and Penn State got in round 1, where they got to bring a team to their campus and play that game within their elements, whatever it may be weather-wise, in front of their home crowd and their fan base getting to affect the game. Those teams with a bye need to get that also. It's also way more pleasing to the eye and the ear to watch a game on a college campus as opposed to an antiseptic indoor bowl game vibe. Way better when you have it that way. So that's 2. Extend that campus host site to the quarterfinals. 3, remove auto buys for the conference champs. Just play it straight up. Top 4 teams get a bye. If you are a conference champion, you're automatically in the playoff, but the chips fall where they may. If by winning that conference championship game you get into the top 4, great. You get a bye. If not, you don't. It's that simple. So get rid of that. That gets rid of the Boise State, Arizona State bye situation. Number 4, if you're not starting earlier, if that's not a possibility, work in conjunction with the NFL and play the national championship game on a Saturday night. We have Super Bowl Sunday. Let's have CFP Saturday. You could have divisional round games starting at noon and 3:30 and kick off a national championship on Saturday night at 8 o'clock. That's a pretty damn good Saturday in January. If I'm waking up and getting ready to go, and at noon I'm watching NFL playoff action and then a late afternoon game, and then that bleeds right into a college football national title on Saturday night, knowing my Sunday is going to be dominated by NFL divisional playoff games, hell of a weekend. Not quite as sexy to have college football playoff national championship Monday night. Just saying. Maybe it works for college basketball, not for college football. Play the game on a Saturday as God intended. Ultimately, the committee got it right with the parameters they were handed. 2 teams that otherwise would not have been in a playoff played for a national title. They wouldn't have been in a 14 playoff, they wouldn't have been in the old BCS game playing for a national championship. That was part of the plan. Boost the odds, give others a chance, don't have the same teams playing for the national title every year. Well, you got that with a 7 versus the 8 seed for a national championship. Now, it's still Ohio State, which is one of the also-rans, one of the usual suspects of teams that can win a national title. So you didn't get some crazy Cinderella story. So I think that the committee got it right, Hutton. There was a lot to like about it. Yet at the end of the first 12-team college football playoff, I'm feeling somewhat empty with the whole process. And I think the reasons I laid out is part of that.
For more of a buzz, yeah. So I'm going to go through these with you. The one less, so that they need to start the thing a week earlier. The problem here is they built in the extra bye week during the season.
Yeah.
So they could remove that. You know, they can't move the Army-Navy game before, they can't do that in week 0 because of plebe summer and some other things going on.
Well,
right?
They also don't want to have the team that played, and this I understand this part of it. If you played for your conference championship,
right,
you don't want that to be, now you're going right into the next week. So that's
right
almost
into the
right. Instead of just getting 1 week, that gives the other team a bye that's sitting there not playing in it. So I do understand that part of it.
Right now, if Army or Navy were eligible for the college football playoff, that's exactly what they would be doing, right?
Yeah,
they would have, because they have to play that if they're playing the conference champion, if they're playing in their conference championship, because there was a scenario where they could play each other 3 times this year. So I think that's just what they have to deal with. So they can't move up the.
And if that's the case, my solution number 4: move this thing to Saturday and make it a day of NFL playoff games in conjunction with NFL that leads into the championship game for college football. CFP Saturday, Super Bowl Sunday.
I think so. They can do that. They could do that this coming Saturday because the AFC and NFC championship games are on Sunday.
Yeah.
So they know that those games are going to be played on Sunday. They know that. They could actually move it back a week, but again, you're extending this a week.
I don't want to extend it any later than it already is.
The only way that you could do that this past weekend is if the network partners are going to be the same. If ESPN and ABC have the rights to one of the divisional round games and they have the late window or the early window or whatever, then you could bookend things.
Yeah, and again, in conjunction with the NFL. So part of this would be how they slice up the pie for playoff games for the NFL.
But the problem, I think, even if you could get the NFL and college football, the playoff to agree, you have to get the network partners to agree. And you have Netflix and Amazon and whoever else that are happy to put on a game head-to-head, against TNT, for the opening weekend, which is, New Year's Eve weekend. They're like, yeah, if ESPN and ABC are going to have this game, let's put on the NFL whoever.
Yeah.
Let's put on the worst playoff game head-to-head against them. I don't know if you could get the networks to agree on that with the money that's being spent on both ends of it.
Yeah.
That's tough.
And look, I'm playing God here.
Well, I know that.
Right? I'm not saying
know.
this is going to be the easiest thing to make happen.
Here's the thing.
I'm giving you my Chad Withrow
I'm trying to brainstorm how we do it.
To make it better if all sides could work together, which we know they probably wouldn't.
Here's the other thing
we can't even work with the bowl sites, by the way, to make it work where you have the second round that's going to be on host sites. So I don't.
Well, you can't.
I know there are complexities here that they're not going to figure out because of the almighty dollar that's involved in all this. I'm just giving you, Chad Withrow, college football fan, what makes this experience better, as opposed to something where I'm left feeling a little bit empty at the end of it. These are the things that I would change.
Okay, so next year, you said we're not trying to play God. The Rose Bowl.
No, I am playing God.
The Rose Bowl is God.
Like with my list, I'm saying I get that there are things that's going to trip this up. I'm playing God here as to what I would do, and I would just make everybody else work with it to make it a better experience.
Then we need to just expand immediately to 16. Because if you expand to 16, you can keep your bowl partners that they have involved with the college football playoff exactly the same. You can serve them with getting the game each, and you can still have 2 rounds on campus. You can do that. The Rose Bowl is going to play on January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
They're the God in all this. You can't move them. So that's why it's always going to be on those 2 the night before, 1 game the night before, 3 on January 1st.
What do you think about this whole thing about the Rose Bowl should host the national championship game every year? I'm indifferent on that. Like, I don't have a strong opinion. I'm
I
okay
don't like
with it. If it ended up being that way, I like the setting.
I'm fine with the semifinal every year.
There's this whole grassroots effort to make Pasadena the Omaha of college football.
But
Where the season ends in Omaha for baseball every year, every season would end in the Rose Bowl.
if you could get them to move off January 1st,
Yeah.
sure.
Got to make sure there's no fires, too, depending on when the game's played.
Fair enough.
Um,
But so next year, January 1st, 2026 is on Thursday. So you're going to have New Year's Eve on a Wednesday, Thursday. Is that going to go head to head with the NFL? It shouldn't. Because Thursday Night Football will be over for that final week of the season. So I don't think you're going to have that same deal that we had this year.
I think the NFL, and again, you're right about the whole there's a huge like in dodgeball when he's throwing a wrench and getting him to dodge the wrench.
Yeah.
There's a huge wrench in all of this, and it's thinking that these multi-million-dollar media deals and these huge conglomerate companies are going to work together on all of this. That's the biggest wrench in all this. But the NFL has such a great setup right now with college football being their minor league system.
Yeah.
In my Chad Withrow perfect world of college football, these two entities get together and come up with a plan where the NFL gives a little bit. They're still in their own independent windows of time where everyone's going to watch those NFL games to set up a college football Saturday where you actually play the national championship on a Saturday night.
I would love it.
Does it boost the ratings in a huge way? I don't know. You know, there's a reason that all these
think
studies
so.
and all these people say Monday night's a great night for television. Sunday night is a great night for people to be at home watching television. I get all that. College football is a Saturday sport.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the sport being played on a Saturday night would be really cool.
and the Super Bowl Sunday's on Sunday. Why? Because they play on Sundays.
Yes.
It's not. I mean, and we all watch.
Yeah.
I'm with you. College football's on Saturday. We would watch.
The weekend, it blends together beautifully.
Yep.
With ball.
Did
Did you get to watch any of the Lou Holtz impression guy from McAfee show?
I only saw like social media clips of it.
Oh my gosh. I was looking forward to talking to Colin about that guy. Incredible.
The mask too.
I'll play one for you, but the reaction to the personal foul roughing the passer from him was hilarious. And I can't even do the Holtz impression the way he does, but him saying, well, I guess we can't even play football anymore. We're not playing football. And just loses his mind is so good.
I don't. The last time
It was good to see Lou, by the way, at the game.
Yeah, man, it was. He
That
looked
was
great.
really cool. Yeah.
Sweet Lou. Got to get him back on the show.
I love the 88 hat that he had, too.
Yeah.
Colin's going to be buying that thing online.
Sweet Lou. So we need maybe Lou Holtz from McAfee could call C-SPAN. Last time I watched C-SPAN was probably when I saw a clip from Howard Stern when someone called in mentioning him. And they were all. When's the last time you watched C-SPAN?
I mean, I've seen more SNL sketches depicting C-SPAN than I've ever seen C-SPAN.
It's
like I've seen spoofs of C-SPAN more than actual C-SPAN.
If you want to go back in time, just watch C-SPAN.
Yeah.
Because it's the one television channel you could apparently just call old
Tradio.
school. You could call it old school and get through. It may be legit or just because you want to drop a name or two. The SEC always gets through. Mm-hmm. Check out the shout out.
Hoping to become the next director of national intelligence. Graham in Jersey City, New Jersey, Democrats line.
Hi, I want to wish everyone a happy MLK Day. I hope everyone's staying warm. A bit disappointed how the election turned out. I think it would have been great to see a female president inaugurated today. While I'm disappointed in the American people and their desire to see another 4 years of Trump, I'm a bit more disappointed in the selection committee for not picking Alabama for the college football playoff finals, and instead picking inferior teams like SMU and Indiana. Truly dark times in America.
Okay. Graham there. We have pictures of more of the president's hopeful
Truly
cabinet.
dark time in
First
America.
off, well done reading off the script there.
Yeah, Graham was definitely reading.
2 giveaways that this is just a plant. Number one, his name's Graham. There's no Alabama fan in the world named Graham.
Yeah.
Period.
Was Thaniel taken?
Yeah. Thank you, Thaniel. Graham was the first option. Thaniel number 2. Also,
There's also no Democrats from Jersey City rooting for Alabama.
right. Yes, and thank you. That's the other part.
We go to the Democrat line in Graham in Jersey City. Talking Alabama football? No, not happening.
Yeah.
This guy's in Fetterman's district. Is he from Jersey or Pennsylvania?
Where do we think the man was a fan of, from to be a fan of what conference? Big Ten?
Jersey City.
I think he's...
In college, I mean, who knows? Probably a Notre Dame fan.
I don't think a fan from California would find that funny to call in and do that.
Yeah, probably just like a Notre Dame fan from Jersey City.
Yeah. Anyway, well done.
You know, it's a lost art. The phony phone call.
It is.
The prank call.
It is. Richard and Sal.
That guy handled it well. He moved on quick. He didn't even really acknowledge it. Okay, we're going to go back to the proceedings once he heard it going in a college football direction.
Yeah, you don't sound like you're from Bama, and your name's Graham.
I just like that something that we all know about, like C-SPAN, still just takes unfiltered, unchecked calls.
Your thoughts
from the public. Let's go back to the Democrat line. Next up, we go to Heath on the Republican line.
Andrew Luck is next to discuss the book club here on C-SPAN.
Yeah.